past and all the rest. So don't fear, we're not in a studio here. So the ingredients that we require is flour, and I've plugged this flour many times before because it's so fantastic, and this is Wallabies plain baking flour. Australian made, so it's only fair to use it here in Australia. We're going a bit fancy, we are putting a bit of bread improver into this one. Bit of salt, bit of sugar to keep us sweet. I certainly need that. And then we've got some good quality yeast. Don't cheap out on the yeast, you've got to get the good stuff, otherwise it's not going to rise, it's going to be a bit depressing. We've got a bit of butter too, because you want to keep the butter out of the fridge, get it ready to put on that first nice slice. We've got a sieve to obviously sift the flour to get it aerated along with the yeast and the salt. This I tend to find works a lot better in getting a successful loaf. And this is my all-round baking dish. It's a cake tin, but works for pies and it works for bread in the camp oven. I tend to find if I make a bit of a dough and put it in the oven, if I end up putting a bit too much water in, it tends to sort of make a large pancake. So that sort of just contains things a little bit better. So anyway, we are making a full-size loaf today, so we do need to obviously make sure it's a man portion. So we need 1 cup, or you can use a guesstimation of 1 cup in a Seriously Serious mug, which you can find at our online store. Look in the content section below and you'll be able to find the link there. So anyway, 5 cups of plain flour is going in to the mixing bowl. 3, 4, and 5, and look, let's just put a little bit more. Let's be generous, eh? Because let's be honest, there's nothing exact out here in the bush anyway. Each time you make it, it's slightly different. So we've got that. I like to put a little pinch of sugar in. Maybe 2. If you're a bit of a sweet tooth, you can put a little bit more in. And then I like to put in a bit of salt, just to stop the arteries from going sloppy. So about 2 teaspoons works pretty good. 2 tablespoons, that's a bit too salty. Yeast, I actually throw that in too. And I put in about a tablespoon. It's a bit much, but it does the job. And then we've got a little bit of bread improver. And this just improves the bread, as the name suggests, so might as well chuck it in. Now we don't need much of this, we need about 6 grams worth. So I'll just put a little bit on the spoon. Oop, that's a bit much, so we'll get the fingers in. Wallabies can lift that. Okay, so we've got it all in. Now what we need to do, or I find works really well, is just to mix it in. No water, nothing like that. Just mix the yeast, the salt, the sugar and all the rest actually into the mix. Because what we want to do is we want to ensure that the yeast is actually evenly distributed throughout the actual flour itself. There's no point putting a big clump in, it won't work. I've tried it using yeast in water and then getting it to actually cure that way, but I don't know, it just doesn't work for me, so it's probably something to do with me, not the yeast. But anyway. Okay, so we've sort of given that a bit of a toss around. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to put it through the sieve. This is nothing flash. I did use it to actually sieve rocks on a job, but I've cleaned it up a little bit and we're going to use it here today. A good flour sieve is really a really handy thing to have. So we'll just put that in there. Hopefully we don't get any flying dates in the actual loaf, but you never know. A bit of extra protein's not a bad thing, hey? So there we are. So that's most of the mix. Now we're just going to sift it through. Okay, we've got one little bit of muck in there. That's another good way of making sure there's no dates going in your loaf. Okay, so we've sieved that. We make a little well in the middle, and now what we need to do is go and get some warm water, 2 cups of, put that in, and a little bit of cool water, and we'll mix it up. Great, thanks Mike. And just get the billy off the fire. Right, so here's one I prepared earlier. So we'll put 1 cup. Now, if you find you end up putting too much water in, don't panic. No point panicking about it. Just put a little bit extra flour in. Don't worry about the other ingredients. Just put a little bit extra in and just get that consistency right. Just get a wooden spoon. Now make sure you get a good quality wooden spoon. This one's not very good, so we'll chuck it in the fire. Good quality one. I tried to do a video doing this a couple of years ago and actually ended up snapping one. But anyway, so moving on to other things, we just mix it in like so. It's going to go a bit crumbly, but that's okay, don't worry. Just mix it in like that. Hopefully you can get a bit of an idea, see that? Okay, so as we can see, it's gone sort of all crumbly. Now what we need to do is add a bit of water. So what I tend to do is I just fill up a cup and then I just put it in slowly. That way you don't go too overboard and have to start putting extra flour in and all the rest. Okay, so now it's starting to come together a bit more. Put a little drizzle more in there. And it's sort of got to that point where it's a bit sticky on the spoon, but it still can fall apart quite easily. So this means we're at the stage now where we actually need to knead it. And I'll show you a really easy way of kneading your bread dough in the bush without making a heap of mess. So anyway, we'll move over to the campfire and I'll show you that. Okay, so the easy way to do it is in the bowl. You can even do this all in your camp oven. So you can really save a lot of time and effort and not making a huge amount of mess. Just put that there. And that's really the key thing when you're camping. You've got to be efficient. We don't have the luxuries that we do at home, but still you don't need to live like a savage. So anyway, we just need a bit of flour. Just put that on our hands so the dough doesn't stick to our hands. And then we just want to get it in a nice ball like so. Put a little bit in the dish so it doesn't stick everywhere. And then we just want to get the palm or the heel of our hand and really just push it into it. And we just want to keep doing this until the actual dough itself becomes one. stops crumbling. The goal is to try and sort of get the air out within it. Try and do it so you can see it. And just really sort of compress it. So you want to do this for at least about 5 minutes. Okay, and that's how your dough should look, something similar to that. Now what we need to do is sort of clean the bowl out. I like to put a bit of Glad wrap over the top, and then I'll show you the best place to put your bread dough to get it to rise. Rightio. So one of the best places to put your dough in order to get it to rise is actually in your car. Even if it's a pretty ventilated vehicle like this Land Rover Parenti. We've got direct sunlight on it, it's out of the breeze, out of the wind, so it's the warmest possible place that we've got here in the camp. Now we're going to leave that there for a couple of hours, and we're going to wait for the dough to double, maybe triple in size. Traditionally, or traditional bread, you would knead it twice, but what we're going to do here is just knead it once. That way it's not quite as dense and it's a little bit easier on the palate. Anyway, we'll leave it there to do its thing and we'll catch up with it later on. Okay, so we've let the dough sit for a couple of hours. It's a pretty warm day here, so it's risen nicely and it's quite happily doubled, if not tripled in size. Now, if you're in a colder part of the world, say Tasmania for example, then what you may need to do if it doesn't rise is you may need to proof the bread. So what do I mean by that? Well, by having a tripod you can actually get your camp oven to the right height where you can just put your hand over for probably a minute or two before it starts getting too hot. What you do is you put the dough in there, you leave it like that probably for about half an hour or so and just keep checking it, and it will slowly rise. Once it's doubled in size, then it's ready to bake. Anyway, enough of that. So I've put a bit of butter in the bottom. This works much better than putting flour in. Flour tends to burn and gets caked on and gets all a bit messy. So butter's the best. So anyway, I'm going to undo it, the cling wrap. Put the cling wrap to the side, and I'm going to wet my hands and basically just slowly get the dough out. It's a bit sticky on the bottom, and then I just pour that in like so. Get it in a rough sort of dough the best I can. Water to smooth it off a bit. Okay, that's pretty good. It's not, you know, restaurant grade, but it's good enough for out here. Right, the next thing we need to do is obviously do that, and then we need to get the coals ready for the camp oven. So obviously what we want to do first is we've got to think about what kind of camp oven we've got. We've got a spun steel camp oven here, so we don't need too many coals. We need to look at the kind of wood we're using also, which we're using gum here today. Gum makes some really nice coals, so we don't need many. If it's very ashy timber like mulga, then you're going to need a lot more because they just don't, the coals don't last as long. Anyway, we don't want to put too many coals on the bottom. We just want just a little garnish of coals, because otherwise we're going to burn the bread on the base. We want to put more coals actually on top. So that'll be enough for us because it's thin steel. The other thing we've made sure is that we're in an area where we've got a really nice camp that Mike's picked, which is away from the wind, so we're not going to get any hot spots on the actual camp oven itself. What will happen if there's a hot spot, particularly like on this section or that section there, one of the two, is this side of the loaf will bake, that side of the loaf won't. So you're going to get uneven, I guess, baking ability, and that's not cool. So anyway, the other thing that you may be thinking is, how on earth do you figure out what the temperature is? You want it to be about 180 degrees centigrade. What you can actually do is you can get a bit of paper and you can just gently put it on top of the coals. Now if that paper goes sort of between a light brown, dark brown, then you're around about that 180, 200 degrees. If it goes black, then obviously it's probably getting up close to 250. If it catches on fire, then it's way too hot, isn't it? So that's a good way to do it. I've done this quite a bit, so I usually just feel with my hand, give it a couple minutes, check, see if nothing's smouldering, and go from there. So we'll leave it for 30 minutes, come back and see what the result is. Now Mike's already got the jam out for us, so that's good. Would you like to come and try some, Mike?
I'd love to.
We've just got to wait for the verdict.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, it's just magic, isn't it?
Of course, you need the apricot jam.
Oh, it's essential.
Right. Oh, beautiful.
Success. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. We'll put a recipe in the content section down below so you can check it out yourself. Give it a go, see how you go. And look, if you're enjoying the videos here at Seriously Series, then please do check us out on Patreon. And if you're new to the channel, click on that subscribe button down below, click on that notification button too, and we'll catch you in our next video. I think Damon needs a slice now.